Everything that the United States told me about Britain was wrong. The truth is, it's so much better. So there is a pub near me that has been open since like the 1500s. I just want you to think about that for a sec. Still baffles me every time I think about it. In the United States, we call something historic that was built in like the 1800s. We make plaques, we build visiting centers around it, we charge admission because, America. In Britain, 1800s is like recent history. The church at the end of the street was built before Columbus reached the Americas. The road that most people drive on to get from the north of England to the south of England was built by Romans. History here isn't a destination, it's part of the background, it's part of the environment around you. You can't get away from it. It's at every turn, every nook and cranny. It kind of does something to your sense of time as a foreigner. It's hard to describe too. The United States is a country that believes in its newness, believes in being a modern culture, and it wants to. It's not as big on preserving history, which I personally think is a bit of a failing. But I understand because it's part of a narrative. It's perpetual fresh start. It's the open road, the next frontier. Whereas the UK is more of like a set of countries that have been having the same arguments with itself and between each other for thousands of years. And it kind of gives a weight to every historical thing that you see, even if it's something as simple as a post box or cobblestone streets, a weight that the United States simply just does not have yet. And I'm afraid might get lost in the shuffle of trying to be the newest and the latest and greatest thing all the time. Right, we have to talk about British food, right? I mean, that whole "the British food is terrible" joke is at least 50 years past its expiration date, probably closer to 100. We really need to retire it because it is so not true. When Americans say British food is bad, they're basing it on like one trip to a gas station and grabbing a quick pie in 1987 as they're on their way to London or something. The modern British food scene is absolutely extraordinary. And not because Britain invented the world's greatest cuisine, but more because it kind of absorbed everyone else's and created their own version of it, which makes it authentic and incredible. If you walk through Borough Market or Birmingham's Balti Triangle and you stop and grab something to eat, try and tell me that the food isn't culture. In fact, London has more Michelin starred restaurants than any other city in Europe. What I'm starting to learn after being here for a few years is that the British relationship with time isn't about like laziness. It's about not caring that that opportunity has been left on the table because something else is taking its place. Something else that's just as important: rest, time with your loved ones, enjoying the life around you. Here in the UK, work is what you do to fund your life. It is not the center of your life. The sentence sounds obvious, but when you are not part of that environment for most of your life, it's not as obvious. For me, it's genuinely taken several years to metabolize even into the surface level understanding that I have of it now. The Sunday pause, the long meals, and the evenings that seem to stretch into eternity, those are not accidents of the British culture. They're an intentional architecture, intentional choices that were made by a culture over several centuries that aren't accidents, were thought of by somebody at some point in British history that decided that human life was much more important than the productivity metric. And I don't think that the US will ever fully understand that, but I hope they get at least somewhat close to it someday. Pretty obvious when you think about the fact that England is part of an island with a couple other countries and it's limited space. So, of course, the houses are going to be a lot smaller than the United States. But what I didn't know was that small would actually completely rewire the way I live. See, in the United States, space is kind of a metric for success. More square footage, a bigger garage, a walk in closet, a bathroom basically the size of most kitchens in the UK. That's the American dream life. And you always want to build up, you always want to upsize in the United States. So when I walked into our very first terrace house in the UK, yeah, my American brain had one thought: where am I supposed to put everything? The answer nobody really tells you is you don't. You just stop buying things. It might sound obvious to anyone outside the United States, but it's not something that most Americans can think of off the top of their head. It's just not the instinct anyway. When your home is compact, every single object in it has to earn its place. There's no junk drawer the size of a spare bedroom. There's no storage unit or extra garage that is just holding stuff that we only use once a year. The bigger shift, for me anyway, was that the world outside starts to become your living room. Pubs aren't just bars where you might get wasted or go see an event or a game. They're part of your front room with better heating and ambiance. Cafes aren't just a place to stop and grab a coffee on your way somewhere else. They're where you go to connect with people you haven't talked to in a while and, where you can spend most of the morning just chatting away. Life stops expanding outward because it can't. So it forces you to start thinking about all of your choices a little bit deeper and also creating deeper connections with the community around you. I have talked about this before, but I have to mention it because it's still something that baffles me when I think about it. I haven't owned a car in years, years since I sold my Jeep after we sold our house. And I'm not even sad about it. Like, I don't miss driving. That sentence would have been is unthinkable in the United States of America. A car isn't just about transportation from A to B, it's about freedom, it's about identity. I mean, getting your license is practically a coming of age ritual in the United States. For me, because of how I grew up and everything, I was desperate to get my license so I could just go when I wanted to go. And definitely desperate to get a car as soon as possible so that it was mine and no one could tell me I could or couldn't use it and I didn't have to borrow it from someone to get somewhere. The United States infrastructure assumes that you have a car and that you drive. It's the history, right? I mean, Britain built its cities well before the car was even a thought in someone's head, which means pedestrians come first. And that is a tradition that they have kept throughout the ages here in the UK. You walk out of your front door in your British home, you got butchers, bakers, yes, actual butchers and bakers on the street still, a pharmacy, a post office. They're all within 15 minutes of walking. Or you have a train or a bus that will get you into town if you live on the outskirts. Of course, there's some more remote areas where this public access isn't as readily available, but there's still access in your local village of something for you to sustain. You don't have to actually leave the village to get it. The freedom that I thought I would lose by not having my car or not having the access to driving on a regular basis, it showed up very, very differently than I was expecting when I moved here. Instead of driving to escape, I started walking towards things I wanted to explore. It's a very different mindset. Britain is never going to be as loud as the United States of America, but it's definitely a little bit deeper, much deeper, actually. And if I'm being really, really honest, I kind of had to leave the country that I grew up in, the country that I was told was the greatest country on earth, to understand that everything I thought was normal was just one option of living. There are others. Some of them are even better. This is what my journey is becoming, proof that there are other options out there, and that if we just have an open mind and conversation about them, we can probably change things for the better. Those are my thoughts. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you all next time.